Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second of the themed sessions for today's event on the theme of power. Though I think we're kind of surreptitiously renaming the session energy so as not to create confusion with the kind of the overarching theme of this year's SEI conference. But very welcome to this morning's session. My name's Ian Bailey. I work on climate and energy politics here at the University of Plymouth, and I'm going to provide some very brief contextual remarks before handing over to my co-chair, Chloe Uden. So energy is one of those overarching issues and really central to the idea of net zero ambitions. We saw from the slide from Chris in the introductory talk that energy was one of those areas where greatest progress has been made in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But nevertheless, one thinks about some of the reports by the UK's Climate Change Committee that the amount of energy generated in the UK will have to double to accommodate things like the electrification of transport and the decarbonisation of how we heat and power our buildings. Then the magnitude of the challenge is very stark. It's one of those challenges that one can see in purely technological perspectives in terms of developing renewable energy technologies, but that provides an important part of the solutions, but not the entirety of them, because energy is really intrinsic and embedded in every aspect of people's everyday lives. And ultimately, the generation of energy is about enabling people to achieve things that they want to achieve, to whether it's from thermal comfort in the home through to conferences like the one we're attending today. So people are really front and center of any meaningful concept of net zero energy transitions. But then that leads us to the question of how to actually to engage people on the level, on the scale, and over the durations that are required to achieve this net zero energy transition. And I guess one way of thinking about it is to think about it in terms of a head, heart, and hands approach. So the head is about the knowledge of the issues associated with energy transition. The heart component is about appreciating the importance of energy life, appreciating the challenges, caring and actually prioritizing energy rather than it just being an invisible part of people's lives. And the hands part of it is all about the practicalities, the know-how of what to do, the opportunities to act, and the wherewithal. All of these three things working in conjunction with each other in order to actually enable people to be a driving force for net zero energy transitions. So having provided those brief contextual remarks, I'd like to hand over to Chloe Uden, who's the founder and artistic director of the Art and Energy Collective, to talk very briefly about some of the work that she's doing in order to address those heart, head, and hands challenges before handing over to our main speaker. So Chloe, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. I'm so happy to be here today. This is such a cool session for us to be part of. So yes, I'm Chloe. I am part of the Art and Energy Collective, and we specialize in designing participatory artworks that help people at whatever stage of their lives connect with energy issues that affect their lives. And the reason why we choose art is because, well, from my point of view, art is a bit like renewable energy for the imagination. So if we experience and if we make art, it can be really good for helping us to begin our journeys, deepen our journeys, and go further into innovating new parts of our journeys into what the future could be like. The sorts of projects that we deal with, the last one that we created was a piece called Moths to a Flame, which the Art and Energy Collective developed with Plymouth energy community, and Al is here talking about his perspective from that. And that was really exploring about individuals' relationship with energy systems and individuals' relationship with power. And our current project, the Mossy Carpet, is really about celebrating the tiny actions that we take and taking tiny steps inspired by mosses to a better world. I'm really excited to be part of this session today to hear what Al and Souran have to say, because community energy is a way of helping us to connect across communities, to share knowledge, to begin to overcome eco-anxiety by being in community and sharing our experiences together. And obviously, work around co-benefits helps us to really deepen an idea of what the future might look like, and helps us to understand enrich that kind of those visions of what we might be able to imagine in the future. So both the things that we're going to hear about today are really, really critical for helping us with dealing with eco-anxiety and helping us with that visioning challenge that we all have.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Chloe. I mean, I'll just say we have the question open on the spot me. So please feel free to ask questions of Chloe as well as our two main speakers as part of that. So I'd like to welcome our first main speaker, which is Alistair Macpherson, Chief Executive of Plymouth Energy Community, who's going to be talking with us about some of the different areas of work that PEC is involved in, both on the supply side and the demand side, really engaging with local communities and unleashing the people power that we've been talking about. So thank you very much, Alistair.
Thank you, Ian, Chloe. Yeah, equally, I'm even more excited to be here than Chloe and Ian. We're all excited. It's great. Thank you very much. I will share my slides and get going. But I am here to tell a bit of a story about the importance of people and being involved in local energy solutions, and that there's a way for doing it, and Plymouth has been doing that for quite some time. We are a leader in this space, and we should be proud of what we've done in this space. Are people seeing my slides? Good. A little story. So 11 years ago, 100 local people from Plymouth came together and set out to create a new future around energy for the city by establishing a new organisation from scratch that was going to tackle three areas. One, issues associated with fuel poverty and affordable warmth, and the injustices that is kind of presents. To tackle some of the frustrations from the incumbents providing energy services to people in their homes, and to take better advantage of the city's solar energy, lapping our shores on a regular basis. That led to a creation of an organisation, a cooperative organisation called Plymouth Energy Community. I was very lucky to be involved with the first 100 people, and I'm very lucky to be still now here today as the Chief Executive of an organisation that is, we believe, driving local people-powered change on energy in our city. We are a charity, a social enterprise. We're cooperative in how we work, and we generally focus on trying to bring fairer, more affordable and lower carbon solutions to our energy system, but keeping the locality and the place at the heart of what we're trying to do. That involves a whole range of things, but in heart, they try to achieve these four outcomes. At the end of the day, trying to enable people to heat and power their homes more affordably. We want to increase local ownership in the broader sense of that word, in terms of getting people understanding and involved in local energy solutions. And that means building confidence and bringing people together. So I'll use the term local energy, but why is that important? We heard Emily talk earlier about the importance of a just transition. And for us, local energy solutions are absolutely essential to that. We see the net zero transition as providing the unprecedented opportunity to put local communities and stakeholders at the heart of restructuring our economy. This is an unprecedented scale of change that we need to do that, and we should take the opportunity to bring more justice and fairness into the solutions that we create and deliver. So that will mean making innovations, energy innovations, and their associated financial investments work more focused and in a more focused and targeted way to tackle the current issues we have around poverty and inequality. And we want to build the social impact associated with those investments. So local energy solutions are what we are about. In practice, that means a number of things. It means building new generation, but owning that generation locally. So we own and manage a lot of the city's renewable energy generation. And it involves working with people in their homes and around their homes and in the community, listening to them and enabling them to take action in one form or another. It involves working in partnership. Like Plymouth Energy Community has come from a partnership with Plymouth City Council, and it continues to live and breathe as an active and grown-up partnership between those two entities. Local authorities can't do this transition by themselves. They need a range of actors working alongside them, and PEC can't do this by itself. So we work closely with Plymouth City Council, but also a range of other local organisations involved in, the supply of energy services, one form or another, but also in fuel poverty and various other kind of social support services. It is a collaborative endeavour where those local actors are coming together, and we play a key role in convening that. At the end of the day, we're an impact organisation. From those 100 people that came together 11 years ago, we are now an organisation that employs 30, and we turn over about £3.5 million a year. Last year, we provided a total value of £815,000 of support to households. We put £1.6 million worth of grant into people's homes, and 86% of the people that we worked with felt better able to stay warm after their house. We are about driving change, and these are some of the kind of metrics that we kind of test ourselves against. So in delivering, I guess, people-powered solutions around this, we've understood and kind of learned a few things along the way, and I was going to share a few headlines around that. Firstly, got to start with where people are at. And most people aren't at a situation where they're really being driven by carbon. Carbon is something tangential to their daily lives. But for many people in Plymouth, poverty is a real issue, and that has only been exacerbated by action in the last few years from the cost of living crisis and the rise of fuel bills. So we spend a lot of our work working with people where they're at to start off with, to help maximise their income, minimise their heat loss in their building, and reduce their energy consumption. That involves skilled advisors working with people on the phone, in their home, in the community, to kind of deal with the scale of that problem. That problem has doubled, maybe trebled, depending on whose numbers you access. But fuel poverty was always an issue in our city, and it's got significantly worse in the last 3 years. We can't ignore that when we're talking about the climate transition. We need to address that front and centre. For Plymouth, that fuel poverty challenge looks like to us, in terms of what we see a busload of new people coming into us in one form or another every week. So that's one bus every week for 52 weeks of the year. There are like 20 of those people having a disability, 7 will be pensioners, 6 will have children under 5 with them, 2 will be refugees. And then we will be working with them to understand their specific circumstances, and then helping them with those very immediate needs associated with their experience of the energy system. And we need to be dealing with that first before we can deal with anything else in relation to the energy transition and climate. We then go on to talk about homes. And homes is where local place-based solutions are going to be absolutely central to our transition. We need to fundamentally improve our energy performance of our housing infrastructure, and by retrofitting and making them more energy efficient, providing them new ways of power generation and heat and generation that are low carbon or zero carbon. You all guys will know that. But what we can't do that is do that with local understanding. There are 115,000 households in this city. About 80,000 of those will be either private rented or owner occupied. They will be those owners and tenants of those buildings will need support to move through this process, and that will be there will be a need for support to come from a trusted position, from organisations that are not in this for a commercial outcome, but they are here to help those households and those residents understand their options, understand what a retrofit of their home would be, to understand where they may be able to access grant or financial solutions, and to help manage the process of those installs. This is a transition that is off the scale in terms of the level of change that we need in that space. And it will require advice that is specific, independent, and tailored to the individual. And local organisations like PEC will be absolutely central to that moving forward. And I would say that every area is going to need a Plymouth energy community in one form or another if we are going to be successful in managing that transition. We've learned a lot about building a community. What does it actually mean to run a community-led organisation in this space? And there's a lot of, community is a word that's used in all sorts of different contexts. We've built a financial community. We've built propositions that we've taken out to investors and built a community of people that are not place-based, but they are interest-based, and they have the financial wherewithal to invest in the solutions. So a lot of the renewable work that we have done has been backed by investments, social investments, and community investments that are enabled through our cooperative structure. We've built communities that are interested in energy, but are not coming at it again from a climate perspective or a technical perspective. They're coming at it from a creative perspective. And Chloe talked about the great work we've done with them previously on art and energy, and we're currently doing some work with crafters in the city. And these were some women that came together to help knit blankets, gloves, hats, scarves and things for people that were struggling with the cold last winter because they couldn't afford to put their heating on. And these are some images from the mass participation art installation that we initiated in Plymouth, and then with Art and Energy we took to Glasgow to the climate conference in a few years ago. I can't remember now when it was, but these interventions for us are absolutely key in building community that are not coming with energy at their lip, carbon at their lip, feeling a need for engagement and to do something in this space. But they can act and have power by using their creative wherewithal to express it. Power is part of what we do. So we own over 25% of the city's renewable energy generation. We have played a significant role in scaling the level of the solar deployment in Plymouth. And we own and manage solar installations on 32 schools and community buildings across the city. And we own a solar farm that generates about 4,000 megawatt hours of energy every year. So that is a substantial part to play in the transition. We are currently in the process of building or planning and finalising the financing for a solar farm, which would more than triple our current level of generation capacity, just shy of 14 megawatts of solar farm on an old landfill site. We have been able to do all these projects. Fundamentally, we've got projects that would not have happened over the line because we understand the locality. These are projects that in many cases are challenging one form or another or weren't being progressed on a commercial basis. But because of the nature of the kind of organisation that we are, we're able to leverage the power of local partnerships. We can bring forward projects in on a not-for-profit basis the commercial sector would not be interested in, and we can bring new forms of finance to the table that, again, are not readily available from just a straight commercial transition. So again, the local part of what we are doing here is absolutely central to our success in mobilising change. And we've also looked at building net zero affordable new homes. So we have an ambition to not only tackle the retrofit of homes, but also to look at how do we drive in the innovation that is required to deliver warm, affordable net zero homes. It's like the current model for delivering new homes is not fit for purpose, and there is a need for massive innovation to drive how do we get this into a cost position that means it can be rolled out as normal. So again, we've been using our local credentials as a local actor to convene. The partnerships need to drive some of that innovation. We've raised over just shy of £500,000 in terms of risk finance to kind of progress this project through. We've got a planning application for this site approved for 70 affordable net zero homes, and we will be testing a innovative finance and procurement model taken from Holland called Energy Sprong. We'll be applying that in the new build sense in England for the first time. So it's a proper innovation. It's at the vanguard of driving some of this work, and we are in the process of getting the final stages of our reserve matters planning application together for submission later this year. So we're acting on multiple fronts. We are exploring, our ability to drive more solar. We are building new homes. We are supporting those people who are some of the most vulnerable in relation to energy, and we are seeking to do that through a range of creative and collaborative manners. Well, next, we've done all this against the current policy environment, and we are just optimistic, I guess, that we are looking on July the 4th towards a new government that might come in and back us with a little bit more support than we've had in the previous years. So clearly, this is not a manifesto speech, but I would encourage everybody in the room to be looking at what the different offerings are in relation to the local approaches to energy, because they are absolutely essential to our transition. That's me. Handing back to Ian.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Alistair. A nice round of virtual applause for really insightful talk. I will just mention I've seen a couple of questions coming up on the beginning to come up on the chat, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate that invitation, not necessarily to feel you have to wait until the end of the two talks before popping a question and remember them for long periods of time. Do ask questions as they occur to you, and we'll take them together in as consolidated a manner as we can towards the after we've had our second speaker, which moves us seamlessly on to welcoming Dr. Souran Chatterjee of this parish of the School of Geography, Earth and Environmental Sciences, has been doing work recently for a few years now with the United Nations on the co-benefits of managing energy demand, and Souran is here to talk with us to share at least some elements of the work that he's been doing in that area. So thank you very much indeed, and welcome, Souran.
Thank you, Ian, for your kind words. Let me quickly share my screen. I guess now you can see my screen. Okay. I hope Ian says yes. Okay. All right. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today's session. I can imagine it's already very challenging to talk just before lunch, so I will try my level best. With this presentation, what I will try to do, I will just address two simple questions. First, how can we achieve energy transition towards a net zero transition, right? And second is what's there for us, and that's it. But before we do that, before we address these two questions, let us first also briefly look into why do we need to care about energy transition. And with this presentation, I will also show some hard data and evidence from our previous works and as well as ongoing works to actually support the points I'm trying to make here. So first, why do we care about transition? So this is the recent CO2 emission data, and as we can see here, that CO2 emission has been rapidly increasing throughout the years, number one. Number two, also this CO2 emission is largely contributed by the energy sector we have. And as a result of which, what we are in is basically around 5 years of carbon budget are left in front of us with this present trend of emissions. And this is basically the what we call carbon clock. This is the live carbon clock developed by my colleagues at the MCC Berlin. You can go and check their websites. So this is calculating live how much carbon budget we are left off. And presently, if we want to achieve 1.5 degree target, that is, if we want to keep the global warming potential within or below 1.5 degree, then we have around 5 years of carbon budget left in front of us. So this is why we are kind of in deep trouble, and all of the speakers, we are saying we need an energy transition. So this is basically a way out, right? But if we know that this is the way out, why the delay? Why countries across the world are still struggling to formulate and take strong action to accelerate the process of transition? There are actually certain reasons behind it. And this is, again, this is just to show you one paper of ours, but there are many of our paper and work, including the latest UN report, where we have discussed that the key reason behind these delays are actually, one, some of the renewable technologies are intermittent in nature. That is, the supply of these renewables are not same across the year. So there is a demand and supply mismatch. For example, solar supply gets picked in summer, whereas the energy demand globally gets picked in the winter. So there is a mismatch between demand and supply, and we do not have an adequate storage facility yet, which can actually provide energy supply across the year throughout, across the globe. So that's kind of a big challenge in front of us. Number three we have is all the technologies, supply side technologies we talk about are very resource intensive. So for a decision maker, a policy maker, it's often challenging to allocate budget for, let's say, to protect our future, which is very much relevant, versus to fund the present NHS. So you can see the dilemma we have in front of us. And the dilemma mostly caused because there is the synergy we often talk about, that is, energy transition would tremendously benefit us. But this synergy is kind of vague and unclear. And along with this unclear synergy and resource intensivity, the problem gets much more complex because our economy and life we are facing different waves of problem. Climate change probably considered one of the biggest wave. Then we have recession, we have health crises such as COVID-19, we faced. We have ongoing crisis. And hence, for a policymaker, it's always safe, okay, let's stay to the normal. But hey, the normal scenario isn't working. So we definitely need to change it. And therefore, what we talk about, and from our research, we show that we also need demand side transition. So the renewable technologies could work much better if we provide them with flexibility. That is, by reducing demand, we can create a system of energy through which can be easily replaced with the existing renewables, which can then decarbonize the energy system. So how can we define demand side transition? First, demand side transition or demand side actions can be defined as policies, interventions, and measures which can modify the demand for goods and services. This includes not only behavioral or lifestyle changes, but also end-use technology adoption rates. For example, building renovation is one of the classic example of demand side measures because it reduces the energy demand of the building sector. So that is why the demand side solution provides an immense amount of flexibility. And here you see just the right-hand side of the slide that this is from one of our recent article, which was published in Jules, which is a high impact journal, where we have shown that the supply side technologies and measures have a high risk and high uncertainty. Whereas the demand side has a much lower risk, less resource intensive, and many more benefits towards us. And that is why we also need to consider demand side very, very meticulously. That is one of the reasons that IPCC Air 6 now has considered a separate chapter for demand side management, or rather demand side measures overall. Now, then the prominent question we need to be asking, but can we reduce energy demand substantially by 2050? Because most of the countries across the globe has this net zero target for 2050. Let me just show you one simple example from the building sector. This is from our upcoming paper, so do not cite that yet. Hopefully it will be published soon in 2 months time. So here we have just focused on 4 scenarios. First is the red line and the blue line represents the demand scenario. The green line represents the present existing scenario, that is the existing renovation rate and high efficiency building stock. And the orange line shows that what will happen if we do not follow even the existing building codes. And here we can see that, and this figure is for EU, and that includes UK as well. It shows that with this modeling exercise, that if we do not actually adhere to the existing building codes, the energy demand would substantially increase. Also, if we actually increase the renovation rate and build more high efficiency building, which is in a way Alistair was also reflecting upon, we can substantially reduce our energy demand for the building sector. And how substantial? It can be around 86% to 90% of reduction. So you can imagine that can be considered as quite substantial. 3 of the major end uses of the building sector, namely space heating, space cooling, and hot water demand, can be substantially reduced through this energy renovations processes. And that is why we can safely say that demand side can actually generate and provide us result, which actually can facilitate the decarbonization of energy system. Now, we understand that, okay, demand can be reduced substantially, but what is there for us? We are again talking about going for energy transition, but can this energy transition, or has this energy transition anyhow benefit towards? The answer to that question is actually yes. The energy transition, precisely the demand side transition, can substantially benefit ourselves, through which, such as improving health, such as improving energy security, such as avoided natural resource depletion and improving productivity. And there are many more, like, these are some of the examples of my papers where we have quite in detail discussed each of these co-benefits, which are very popularly known and referred as a socioeconomic impact, as a substitute of socioeconomic impact. And just to show you some of these co-benefits, how they are reported across both countries in Global South as well as countries in Global North, you can see that significantly each of these co-benefits are being reported across the globe. And some of the co-benefits, such as health benefit, reduced air pollution, are kind of equally important across the globe. So that shows that we kind of understand that there are co-benefits of energy transition, especially demand side policies. But still, this dialogue of co-benefit, this dialogue of socioeconomic impact still remain missing from the overall discussion platform of energy transition. The reason for that is that most of this co-benefit are often neglected, since they are very hard to identify, number one. Number two, even if they are identified, it is very difficult to quantify them. So for a policymaker, when they discuss that what is the cost of implementing certain demand side or even certain supply side measure, they know the cost, but for the benefit, they just know some fuzzy ideas that, okay, it can improve health, but by how much? How much will their money will be saved from the public health sector, for example? So these are basically the methodology struggle we often face, and that is why we are seeing the missing component in terms of co-benefits are not being discussed in the policy evaluation. And that is why what we try to do, we try to develop a methodology first to rigorously identify these co-benefits, and second, to rigorously quantify them. So for the first step, what we did to rigorously identify the co-benefit, we created something called impact pathway map. So this is again one example I'm showing from one of my past papers, where I showed just implementing high efficiency building in the European countries. The primary benefits we will get is actually improving thermal and acoustic comfort. Second is reduction of mold. And third is better ventilation and filtering. This would then lead to improvement of health because indoor exposure to pollution would be substantially reduced. And improvement of health would be actually can be realized by avoiding health impacts such as allergies and asthma, flu and cold, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and many more. So ultimately, this improvement of health would lead to well-being and so on. And well-being ultimately, goes back to GDP, and few further other well-being related benefits can be counted upon. So this is just to show that how rigorous impact pathway map was to identify that by implementing a high efficiency building, how it can lead to productivity and well-being. And you may ask this question, why productivity? So for that, let me share a small story with you that, back few years back when I was actually developing this methodology and developing equations, my initial idea was just to quantify and monetize the health risk and health outcome of it. And then in one conference like this, although on contrary like this, it was an in-person conference, a person stood up and said that it's interesting what you are doing, but you are a heartless criminal because you are trying to monetize a human life. I was not trying to do, but what kind of, something rang an alarm in me that probably health, when we say health risk, although we want to consider health into our policy decision, but often the times due to our thinking pattern or mindset, we often consider that it is risky to put a value to health. Although there are several studies which actually does this work, but to avoid all sort of controversies, I picked productivity, but the labor productivity improvement is actually happening due to improvement in health. So this is why I indicated here productivity. But to my surprise, productivity, like health, do not have many indicators. And hence, I need to develop indicators for each of these arrows you are seeing. So let me show you some of the indicators I developed. So for productivity, I developed primarily 3 indicators. And for time reasons, I will just show results for one indicator here, that is the active days indicator. But let me briefly explain these 3 indicators to you first. First, what is active days? Active days has 2 sub-indicators in it. First is sick days and second is DALI. DALI is disability adjusted life years lost. This is a very popular health indicator developed by WHO. Sick days is nothing but a combination of absenteeism and presenteeism. So what is absenteeism? Absenteeism tells us that when we are absent from work due to being sick. And presenteeism tells us that when you are present at work despite being sick. Often our studies have shown that this absenteeism and presenteeism are mostly caused due to indoor exposure to the pollutant. And especially, considering the building conditions we have seen in the UK as well as in most of the European nation, if not all, it's pretty alarming, and seeing the data is actually pretty alarming. And hence, this sick days is actually can play a pivotal role to tell us how many days we are losing just due to being sick. Here, you need to remember when you are present despite being sick, you are not losing entirely a day, but 3/4 of the day. And this is based on, again, literature data, which actually, done quite robustly. Next indicator, we have workforce performance, which shows that due to improvement of mental well-being by working in a high efficiency building, a workforce in a particular non-residential or precisely office building can work substantially better, produce much better results. So this is how we have tried to quantify workforce performance. And third one is probably the tricky one. And to tell you the truth, that I am yet to quantify this due to lack of some data. That is, this talks about the future. So earning ability indicator talks about the children who are missing school days due to being sick. And as a result, if they miss too many school days, it will have an impact on their future earning ability. And the magnitude of this could be quite tremendous. But there are some macro level dose response data for the children, which we are still gathering, and hopefully in future time we will be able to publish. But nonetheless, these are the three indicators. And now what I will show you is, using high efficiency building, how many active days we can save. And for our case study today, I have selected Germany and Hungary to show that how many of the active days these two countries can save or gain by just using high efficiency building. And here we see that Germany, just for residential sector, can gain around 5 days a year in per person, whereas by non-residential, it can get around 2 days a year. For Hungary, it gets around 2 days a year for residential and 1 day a year per person. Here, the significant improvement, what you are seeing are actually the significant difference, what you are seeing between Hungary and Germany are mostly because of the reported sick days data. Because in Germany, the sick days reporting are much more rigorous, number one. And number two, people there, they prefer to be sick than to be present despite being sick, because the labor law kind of give them the protection, the German workforce, the protection to get sick and take a day off. Whereas in Hungary, the labor law was not that protective compared to Germany. And hence we saw that the reported sick days was actually less. And hence presenteeism days were actually more. So that's why you are seeing the difference here. On my right-hand side, this is the data you are seeing for the DALI, disability adjusted life years, because the sick days are active days. The sick day indicator precisely within this active days can only show data related to morbidity, whereas the health data we have seen are actually representative for both mortality and morbidity. And hence we are also using DALI. And here you can see that DALI data for both Germany and Hungary, DALI basically tells how many healthy life years can be lost, are quite significant due to this indoor air exposure. And as a result, this is something really, really concerning to us. Now, to conclude, I think I'm running a bit over time, so I would try to conclude as soon as I can. To conclude then, when we try to monetize just using the daily wage we have for these two countries, both Germany and Hungary can gain substantial monetary values. And these monetary benefits needs to be accounted into policy evaluation. And basically, if we can include this monetary benefits into policy evaluation, we would see that establishing the synergy which we spoke earlier, that is synergy of benefit and transition, can be much easier to make. And it would be kind of an easy decision for the policymakers to make as well. Along with that, energy transition is not about only having a decarbonizing system, but it also about improving people's health, because there are a significant health benefit of that process of transition. And their energy efficiency improvements, along with other demand side measures such as behavioral and lifestyle changes, can substantially contribute to improve the well-being while accelerating the process of transition. And also, we need much more local projects, local energy communities to support the whole process of transition. Because remember, more the local projects we see, it will provide much more flexibility to the national energy system we have. And that is why it is tremendously important to talk about demand side measures, because it not only helped us create a net zero society, but also improved healthy society, which has seen some level of prosperity as well. So with this, I would like to say thank you for your attention and time. If you have any question, I'm happy to answer. Thank you. Over to you, Ian.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I have to tell you, you're entirely wrong, because your timing is impeccable, because we finished exactly at 12:15. And now, with thanks again to Souran, Alistair, and Chloe, I'd like to invite, we've got some questions already, but to invite further questions for any three of us. We all stay on screen for this component. That'd be great, and to see what questions arise. I'll let people add more questions, but we do have some that's come up already. And I should just add here, this is where technology really lets you down, because the device where I've got the questions loaded onto has just informed me of a forced restart, which I've tried to snooze in the hope that it won't happen in the next 15 minutes. But if that device goes down, then please, Chloe and others, if you're able to pick up the questions that I'm no longer able to see whilst the reboot starts. But I'm going to start, I think, with a kind of a general question. I think it's more towards you, Alistair, which is kind of your tips, your top tips for setting up and kind of keeping going, I guess, a community energy initiative.
Top tips. I think for setting up, I think there's like, in terms of we look forward from where we are today, I think there's like two areas I'd suggest people look at. One, in terms of demand side, there are roles that communities can play in helping demand side reduction without being experts in the technology, because they know their locality and they should value that knowledge, so that they understand their community and seek to work with those people that do have the expertise around what the actual technical measures may be. At the moment, there's a disjunct between a very technical-led solution to retrofit and the need for communities to understand it and be supported in that understanding by organisations that they align with and they understand and will talk in the same language. And so there's a role for communities to help bridge. So if you are working somewhere else and you're thinking about setting up something, I would encourage you to reach out to the other organisations that are already working in the domestic retrofit space and have a conversation about how you know your community and how you can help those organisations get better access to people and to open conversations around domestic retrofit. So that's, I think, tip number one. Know your value as a community. You don't need to be a technical innovator. Your value is your community and go out and trade on that. And the second one, I think, is on that generation side of things. So I would encourage people to look at what Labour have said in their GB energy proposal. Central to that is a proposition to really scale in quite a transformative sense the level of local energy generation, renewables, solar, wind, technology, but doing that in a way that is local for many of the reasons that Souran have identified, but for many of the kind of co-benefits that Souran have identified. Labour and Co-operative Party understand that there is a very strong element to that into the GB energy proposal. I would encourage people to look at it and to let Labour and the Co-op Party know that you want it to happen. You want it to see as part of that first 100 days of action of government is that they're really prioritising these projects. So again, and then if you are a local community thinking to do that, look at that and think about what those opportunities might mean for you in terms of the next steps you might mean, because it's going to be different from the experience we've had for the last 5 to 10 years.
Thanks very much, Alistair. I'm going to move over to Souran. So kind of the focus of, if I've interpreted this question correctly, kind of the focus of a lot of what you're talking about in terms of co-benefits related to monetization of health benefits in particular. And the question coming in kind of relates to, I think, scope for broadening that out, kind of when we're thinking about co-benefits of reducing energy demand in relation to biodiversity and kind of other not necessarily human-centered and not necessarily economically centered kind of measures of co-benefit. So is there much work going on in that area?
Yes and no, first of all. And don't get me wrong that I'm trying to produce a capitalist economy by monetizing everything. But that's not the point. The point is, when we are thinking from a policy decision perspective, we are living in a resource constrained world. And for a policymaker, when it's just the cost and not the benefit, we are in tremendous disadvantage. And there are a lot of evidence which, from our different discipline, we are showing that it is actually the case that this type of monetization needs to be happening. And hence, to answer your question directly, there are some work going in terms of monetizing the biodiversity, and in some cases monetization is just not the sake for monetization, but a physical value can also give a magnitude. And this is why, that is exactly the reason why in my research, at least, I first try to put a physical value to it and then try to monetize it. For biodiversity, there are some work going for some of my colleagues. I personally do not directly work on quantifying biodiversity, but yeah, some aspect I am involved presently, which we are trying to do now.
Okay, thank you. So yes, it is important there. I guess it's kind of the temptation is always to think about net zero in terms of humans, but it's about kind of so much more than just humans. It's about the entirety of the planet. I'm going to actually take chair's privilege in this point, and it's kind of a question directed to Souran, but also inviting Chloe and Alistair as well to kind of comment on it, because I think it has a kind of a wider straddling relevance. Kind of the line of thinking I'm developing here is that these co-benefits have not been identified, certainly haven't been quantified systematically previously. And I guess one undercurrent, one kind of the question is then, how do you actually communicate that? How do you actually bring those to generate pressure? And one avenue would be talking directly to policymakers, so that when they're making they're making energy decisions, then they're thinking about co-benefits and they're understanding those co-benefits much better. But the other part of it is, all these co-benefits actually relate to people. And so another route way for doing it is kind of, is taking those out to broader audiences, so that public demand for those co-benefits and the mechanisms by which they are communicated to decision makers, to corporates, and all the rest of it becomes pivotal. So I don't know where, Chloe, you kind of particularly wanted to, or you had things that you might want to comment about how you actually kind of get people interested in those co-benefits, and then they start to become the champions for them and the pressurizers of decision makers.
I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to that. One of the things that we notice is that everyone, whether you are an expert or not an expert, is on a journey from not really understanding the energy systems that we're part of, not really understanding whether that's natural energy systems or man-created energy systems. So we're on a journey from not understanding the systems we're part of into a place where we need to understand in order to have agency within those energy systems. And that is a kind of an act of imagination. It's something to do with the energy lens that we have on the world, the way that we see the world, the values that we have, the dynamics that we notice. And it's to do with our ability to vision the future and importantly, to vision a better future. And that's where the co-benefits piece is really exciting for general people. How you get people to engage with what those might be, I think, is often around sitting around a crafting table, sitting around a kitchen table, sitting with other people, doing things that occupy your creative being in order to kind of open doors in the imagination, to be more receptive to and to be looser in your ideas about how things are. I think that we live in a world where most people are burned out, that they, as we've heard in previous sessions, social injustice is huge. People are making decisions about what burdens they can pick up and carry, and what their duty of responsibility to themselves and others is. And so what art does, art making, creativity does, is help us navigate what is meaningful to us, what is going to drive us, what is going to help us to take ownership of the tiny piece that we can be part of, and fit that within with an understanding of the natural world and natural resources that we are part of, and become agents of change, which is essentially what we're asking everyone to do. So yes, I I thank you for the opportunity to share why I think that there is still a great deal of work to be done in that imagination space, helping people talk more about what the future might be and imagine something better.
Thank you very much, Chloe. I'm going to try and sneak in a couple more questions or a couple more sets of questions before we have to end the session. It does seem there's quite a number of people out there in the audience, Alistair, who might be quite keen to set up community energy projects themselves. But kind of obviously there's lots of questions around some of the practicalities of that. And it kind of also speaks to kind of some thoughts I was having about scaling up the sorts of work that PEC is doing in the energy arena. There was a question about grid capacity and innovation moving in step, or actually being a constraint on the sort of work that you're doing, and also about where finance predominantly comes from. So if you're able to kind of speak to those briefly, Alistair, that'd be great.
Yeah, grid is a significant constraint. In Plymouth, but nationally, we haven't got enough investment in our grid, one form or another. There's not enough wire in the ground to generate, to transmit the electricity around from where it's generated to where it needs to be consumed. So we see that as a constraint. We were fortunate with our Chelsen Meadow Community Solar to get a grid offer there at a time, well, we're just fortunate, I think. Not 14 megawatts of connection capacity there. It doesn't come around very often. It's a constraint on our project. We've got another 2 megawatt project that we've been talking about in Ernesettle in the northwest of the city, quite close to our existing solar farm. And that's how we've had to change the nature of that and reduce the size of that because of grid constraints, that with other means we wouldn't be able to connect that new generation until after 2030. And those are issues that are replicated everywhere around the country. So grid constraint is an issue. It's getting better, I think, in terms of the work that the network operators are doing in terms of being more flexible and dealing and managing that process of connection in different ways. And so I do see some reason for hope there. So some of it is more investment, some of it's just about managing the system in a different way, in a more intelligent way. So I think there is significant reason for optimism about change there. The other point was around finance. So we get money from all sorts of different places. So we have raised money for our capital projects through community shares. We've had social investment. We've had long-term debt arrangements with local authority, with the council. We use a lot of grant work. So a lot of our work in terms of supporting the vulnerable is dependent on grants that come forward in one form or another. So those are charitable grants to support vulnerable households. And we also work with government-funded programs in one form or another. So there's a raft of different lines of income for us in terms of trying to run an energy community. You're muted, Ian.
I'm muted, yes. At the time, I realise is 12:29, and we've got the session ends at 12:30. So I was going to take one more question, but I think time has beaten us on this occasion. So there's lots more questions out there, and we'll try to harvest them and talk to people about those via other avenues. So I'd just like to end the session today by saying a huge thank you to everybody for attending the session, and a special thank yous to Chloe and to Souran and to Alistair And also, I'm going to say Amber in the background, actually helping manage things and keeping things running smoothly. So we hope that you've enjoyed the session. Thank you again to everybody. Enjoy your break and look forward to seeing all or most of you for this afternoon's sessions and the workshops. So enjoy your lunchtime, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.